Good morning, class. Today we will be going over physiology and histology of the skin. To me, this is probably one of the most important chapters because as an esthetician, as a nail tech, as a wax technician, we have to know the skin so that we can have greater results and greater outcomes for our clients, and also to keep them safe and to educate them on the services that they're doing with us and basically what they should do at home for at-home care. So this is a really important chapter for me personally. Take your time to go through this chapter. Don't rush through it because I'm pretty sure on your state board exam there are going to be a lot of questions about the layers of the skin, the cells, the functions of the cells, so on and so on. So let's have fun with this chapter. Maybe even you can do a project where you can make a 3D model of the layers of the skin. It's not mandatory. That's what I have my students do at my school. But sit back, open up your books to whichever chapter physiology and histology of the skin is found, and let's get into it. Okay, so we are going to go over a lot in this chapter, and these are basically the highlights of what we're going to cover. So we are going to describe the functioning of the skin. We are going to explain the layers of the skin, and I think that's probably one of the most important sections of this chapter are the layers of the skin. You got to memorize those layers. We are going to discuss the anatomy of the skin, explain how the skin gets its color. We are going to name the glands of the skin. We are going to discuss sun damage and sun protection. Hold on, next slide. We are also going to talk about how the skin ages over time. We are going to talk about free radical damage. And lastly, we are going to talk about hormones and how hormones affect the skin. All right, firstly, somebody tell me, what is histology? That's right. Histology is the study of the structure and composition of the tissue. So, somebody else, tell me what is physiology? That's right. You guys are so smart. So, physiology is the study of the functions of living organisms, okay? Let's go over skin facts. Did you know that the way that we use the word skin amongst colleagues is the integumentary system? That's what we refer to with the skin. We say integumentary system. So now that you guys are going to be my colleagues, when we talk amongst ourselves, we're going to say the integumentary system, okay? So that the regular people don't know what we're talking about. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So, did you know that the skin is the largest organ of the body? That's pretty cool. It is designed to protect us from outside elements. And we have lots of skin layers. We have nerves. We have cellular function that helps keep our skin hydrated. We have hair follicles, glands that work together to protect the body. We have a lot of stuff going on in our skin, and I'm so excited to talk about it. Next slide. Skin facts continued. So let's talk about healthy skin. Did you know that healthy skin is lightly moist, soft, smooth, and rather acidic? So, who can tell me on the pH scale, where should our skin be? That's right, it should be at a 5.5 to a 6. 7 is ideal because that's neutral. But remember, our skin is slightly acidic. So 5.5 through 6 is good. Okay? So On the palms of our hands and the soles of our feet, the skin is the thickest. But where is it the thinnest? Around the eyes. So when you're doing your facials, you always want to make sure that you're very, very light-handed around the eyes when you're applying the serum. Because guess where the first place we see aging? That's right beside our eyes, because the skin is so, so fragile. In our skin, we have miles of blood vessels, millions of sweat glands, and an array of fibers that work together that send messages to the brain and away from the brain. So we have accessories to our skin, and these accessories are called our appendages. So that's your hair, your nails, your sweat glands, and your oil glands, okay? These are all accessories to our skin. Average weight of the skin is 8 to 10 pounds. That's why I can't lose that last 10 pounds. I'm just kidding. Our skin covers an area of about 22 square feet. That's pretty wide. Our skin contains 1/2 to 2/3 of the blood in our body. That's a lot. Half of the primary immune cells are found inside the skin. So on the back of your hand, I want you guys to do 1 little square inch like this. 1 little square inch. And we're going to talk about what we're going to find inside of that 1 little teeny tiny square inch. Okay? So inside of that square inch, you are going to find millions of cells, 15 feet of blood vessels, 12 feet of nerve endings, and 650 sweat glands. Wait, it continues. Next slide. 100 oil glands, 65 hairs, 1,300 nerve endings, 155 pressure receptors, and 12 cold and heat receptors. That's a whole bunch of action going on in our skin. Okay? But it all happens to keep us what? To keep us safe. Thank you, skin. I love you. What? I'm crazy, y'all. Join me. Okay, so we already know that the skin does what for us? It protects us. But what else does it do? I mean, what is it that you do, really? Well, let's get into it. So, first thing we have is protection, yeah? Then we have sensation, heat regulation, excretion, secretion, and absorption. Sensation continued. So we have millions of nerve fibers that end in the surface of our skin that help us to detect stimuli. And stimuli is basically if something is touching you or if something is hot or cold or anything that you feel. That's stimuli, okay? So we have 2 types. We have the afferent and we have the efferent. So the afferent is basically sending messages from the 5 senses to your brain. So touch, smell, sight, hear, and I'm forgetting one. Y'all forgive me. But basically through all of those 5 senses, the afferent nerve picks up stimuli and it sends it to the brain. So the next step, once the message is received from the brain, The brain has to do something about whatever is going on, whether it's good or it's bad. It has to react. So it sends the efferent nerves. And so the efferent nerves are basically responsible for contracting the muscle, making the body do an action. Okay? So we touch a hot stove, the afferent nerves send the message from our fingers to the brain saying, hey, this is really hot. So then the efferent nerves goes down to the hand, it contracts the muscle, and it moves it away. Okay? So, heat regulation. So, on average, our body is at a 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and for all my European friends, that is 37 degrees Celsius. Skin adjusts to warm and cool the body daily, okay? So, we have hair follicles and sweat glands that work together to basically keep our body's temperature regulated. So our body will dissipate heat or cool the body. It allows for evaporation through the sweat glands, and blood vessel dilation assists in cooling of the skin. So I want to read some more about heat regulation in our books, okay? So go ahead and get your books out. Okay, we have our books. All right, so let's get right into it. Heat regulation. The body maintains thermoregulation through evaporation, perspiration, radiation, and insulation. Millions of sweat glands release heat from the body through perspiration to keep us from overheating. When we then cool ourselves through evaporation on the skin's surface. Blood flow and blood vessels dilate also assist in cooling of the body. So if our blood vessels expand, that helps to cool down the body. And when they constrict, what does it do? It heats up the body. Hair follicles also help regulate body temperature and protect from heat loss. When we are cold, the erecti pili muscles attached to the hair follicles contract and cause goosebumps. This reaction is thought to warm the skin by the air pocket that is created under the hair that stand up when the muscle contracts. Shivering is also an automatic response to cold and a way to warm up the body. Okay? So that's just a little bit more on how our body keeps thermoregulation through sweating, through evaporation, through our blood vessels expanding and our blood vessels contracting, okay? It's always working super hard to keep us right at that 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? So we went over this while we read the book, and it protects by constricting blood vessels, insulating the body with fat layers, and we talked about shivering, how that is your body's natural way of trying to heat up the body. Okay, so we have excretion and secretion. This is also a way that our body protects us. So excretion is dealing with your sweat glands. So when you exercise, what does your body do? It sweats, okay? So I know my students usually get confused between excretion and secretion. So always remember EX for excretion is for sweating, and when you exercise, you're sweating. So the two EXs, excretion and exercise, are for sweating. So that is the best way that I can help you remember which one is for excretion and secretion. So the sudoriferous gland, aka your sweat glands, it excretes perspiration. It detoxifies the body by excreting excess salt and unwanted chemicals through the pores and the follicles, and it is part of the acid mantle. So I wanted to touch really quick on the words pores and follicles. we see that they use both of those terms because actually a lot of our clients use those terms interchangeably. So your pore is actually your oil gland, and it has the little oil sac underneath the skin, and your follicle is actually where your hair comes out. So those are two separate things. And usually our clients will refer everything to pore. But we as estheticians, we know that there is a difference between a pore, which deals with your oil secretion, and your follicles, which is basically the hair, okay? So we know that there are some oil glands that are attached to the hair follicle. We do know that because that's how the oil comes out onto the skin and out onto the hair, and it keeps it moisturized. But we still do have pores that stand alone with their own little coiled sac underneath the skin. Okay. So, secretion and sebum both have an S, so that is the best way that I want you guys to remember that secretion is for the oil, okay? Secretion, sebum, they both start with an S, so you know that is for your oil glands, your sebum glands, okay? So, what is sebum? It is an oily substance that protects the surface of the skin and lubricates the skin and the hair. It is produced by the sebaceous glands, and it keeps the skin soft and protected from outside elements. So, absorption. Absorption of beneficial skincare ingredients, water and oxygen are necessary for skin's health. Skin absorbs oxygen and it discharges carbon dioxide. Did you know that? That's cool. Absorption occurs through cells, and let me get my camera to go off so you guys can see what that says. Go off, camera. Okay, so absorption occurs through cells, follicles, and pores. All right, so absorption continued. Our skin is very selective who it lets inside, okay? So your skin's not just going to let anything get inside of the body, okay? It's very selective. So topical products and creams are absorbed through the hair follicles and through the skin. It penetration is determined by the size of the molecule and other characteristics. So if the molecule is too large, more than likely it's not going to penetrate, okay? Many chemicals can penetrate the skin, and it can be either harmful or beneficial to the skin. All right, so we have a picture of the layers of the skin, and we all know that there are many, many layers that we have to go over, okay? So what I want you guys to do is to basically stop the video, and I want you to come up with an acronym on how you're going to remember the layers of the skin, okay? And once you guys come back, I want you to comment below what your acronym is for the layers of the skin. It can be from the subcutaneous up, or it can be from the stratum corneum down. Whichever direction you want to go, let me know what your acronym is, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so you guys can make your acronyms. Okay, so welcome back. Did you guys come up with an acronym? If not, maybe you can borrow mine. Mine is not the greatest, but it works for me. I actually worked from the stratum germinativum up to the stratum corneum, so don't laugh. Mine says, go send George and Linda some cookies. So that's I'm backwards. Stratum germinativum, okay. And after that, we have the spinosum. Then we have the granulosum. Then we have the lucidum. and then we have the stratum corneum. So I worked from the inside out, but whatever way you want to make it so that you can remember the layers of the epidermis, please do it, because it was so hard for me to memorize the layers of the epidermis when I was in school. So this is a cute little trick to help you remember. Go send George and Linda some cookies, okay? If not, comment below what you came up with for your acronym, okay? All right, so in the stratum corneum, this is the outermost layer. Another word that we like to use for the stratum corneum is the horny layer, is because it's always super, super flaky skin in that layer of skin, okay? So another way to describe the stratum corneum is the horny layer. This is the primary concern for estheticians. It is thin yet is waterproof. It is permeable, which means that things can go in and out of it. It regenerates itself, it detoxifies the body, and it responds to stimuli. So that's just a little bit about the stratum corneum. Okay? So let's see what else we can say about this. So the keratinocytes, which are found in the stratum corneum, the keratinocytes on the surface have hardened into corneocytes, the waterproof protective cells. These dead protein cells have dried out and they lack a nuclei. This layer is referred to as the horny layer because of these scale-like cells. Okay? So what are keratinocytes? These are basically dried out epithelial cells that do not have a nuclei anymore, but is still used to protect the skin from transepidermal water loss. Okay? Let's see. So how often does our skin shed? It sheds every 28 days, and that varies between how old you are, what medications you take, how active you are, your lifestyle in general, okay? So, desquamination, this is basically the process of the keratinocytes releasing itself from the skin, okay? And another way to say that is basically when your skin sheds, okay? When it replenishes its cells. These cells are replaced by new cells coming from the surface from the lower stratums. This process of desquamation and replacement is known as cell turnover. The average adult cell turnover rate is every 28 days, depending on a person's age, lifestyle, and health. The cell turnover rate slows down with age. Cells and oil combine to form a protective barrier layer on the stratum corneum, and we already know what that is, the acid mantle. The stratum corneum cells are surrounded by bilayers of oil and water. Lipids of the cell's membranes, such as phospholipids and essential fatty acids, determine the health of this protective barrier. In general, the stratum corneum has 12 to 20 layers of cells. The stratum corneum has a thickness between 0.01 to 0.04 millimeters. The keratinocytes on the surface of the skin are also called squamous, which is flat and scaly keratinized cells. There are different terms used to describe the same cell, so it is helpful to remember these surface cells are both flat and hardened, squamous and cornified. Okay, so that is the epidermis in a nutshell. I'll give you a minute to pause this slide so you can write it down. Okay? So once again, the epidermis, the stratum corneum continued. We talked about the corneocytes and how it becomes hardened. Also, we want to talk about desmosomes. Desmosomes are intercellular connections that provide strength to the cells, okay? So this is found in the stratum corneum, the desmosomes, okay? And we also talked about squamous cells. These are basically flat cells that help to protect from other layers. So now we're going to move on to the stratum lucidum. So this is a clear layer under the stratum corneum, and it lets light pass through. It is made of smaller cells and is found on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. The keratinocytes contain clear keratin in this layer of skin. Now we're going to talk about the stratum granulosum. It is composed of cells resembling granules. Cells are filled with keratin in this layer of skin. Layer where keratin and intercellular lipids are formed here in the stratum granulosum. The cells move up and they replace the cells in the stratum corneum, and that basically helps with the desquamation process or the cell turnover process. Every 28 days, we are replenishing our skin with new skin. So a little bit more about the stratum granulosum. So this is also known as the granular layer. It is composed of cells that resemble granulars and are filled with keratin. The production of keratin and intercellular lipids also takes place here. In this layer, enzymes dissolve the structures, the desmosomes that hold cells together. As these cells become keratinized, they move to the surface and they replace the cells shed from the stratum corneum. Natural moisturizing substances such as triglycerides, ceramides, waxes, fatty acids, and other intercellular lipids are made here and are excreted from cells to form components of the skin's waterproofing barrier function of the top layer. These water-soluble compounds are referred to as the natural moisturizing factor. That is the NMF. You want to highlight that in your book. And hydrate the lipid layer surrounding the cells, absorbs water, and it helps to prevent water loss. Okay? So that is everything on the stratum granulosum. So, stratum germinativum. This is also known as the basal layer. This is right above the second layer of skin, which is basically a slide that we're going to get to in the future. Okay, I don't want to confuse you with too much information just yet. I know you guys are super smart, but this is the last layer of the epidermis, okay, before we get to the dermis. So, the last layer of the dermis is the stratum germinativum, also known as the basal layer. It is located above the papillary layer of the dermis. It is composed of basal cells. Cell mitosis is continuous in this layer. It's continuously creating new baby cells and dividing and multiplying in this layer of skin. So this is basically a baby factory for skin. It's constantly evolving, okay? So in this layer, you have lots of mitosis. The cells migrate to the surface starting at the basal cell. Okay, this is where everything starts. And as it starts to migrate to the top, the cells, they become stronger and they become more protective for our skin. So now we're going to talk about the dermis. This is the second layer of skin, and it is much, much bigger compared to the epidermis, okay? So this is the live layer of connective tissue, okay? So usually we consider the epidermis to be the dead layer of skin, even though that there is a lot of activity that's happening. We consider the dermis to be the true live layer of skin, okay? So the dermis is 25 times thicker than the epidermis, and it has two layers. You have the papillary layer and the reticular layer, okay? So the dermis helps to support the structure of the skin. It nourishes the lower epidermis, the basal layer, and it is comprised of connective tissues made of collagen, protein, and elastin. So collagen basically keeps our skin nice and plump and supple, and elasticity keeps our skin nice and tight, okay? Reticular layer continued. Quantity of elastin in the dermis is only 1 to 15%, 1 to 15th of collagen. It forms an elastic tissue. Damaged elastin, it basically causes sagging, wrinkling, and premature aging of the skin, which is something that we don't want. So elastin is really important um, for our skin to stay nice and tight and to help to prevent against premature aging. Inside of the reticular layer, we will find ground substance. So this is a fluid matrix, which is beneficial for hydrating the fluids in the cells of the dermal cells. Okay, so an example of ground substance is hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid is basically very beneficial to keeping our skin nice and hydrated. Did you know that hyaluronic acid is actually produced by the body? Okay. But as we age and as we, you know, have improper diets, sometimes the hyaluronic acid may fluctuate. So that's why whenever you buy a moisturizer or a serum, always remember, look for hyaluronic acid because it's going to hold at least 200 times its weight in hydration. And we know that hydration is going to keep our skin from premature aging. So that is the key to keeping our skin nice and soft and supple, is to always keep it hydrated, okay? And hyaluronic acid is just one of those ingredients that you always want to look for, okay? And also here in the reticular layer, it helps to aid in cell migration, metabolism, and growth, okay? So lastly, we have the subcutaneous tissue. I know it says dermis, but this isn't with the dermis. I need to fix this slide, sorry. But the subcutaneous tissue is a layer all by itself, okay? So it's basically the fatty tissue. It gives contour and smoothness to the skin. It creates a protective cushion. It is a great source of energy for us, and it actually decreases with age, okay? So that's why when we get older, we usually get fillers right here on the cheeks, because that subcutaneous starts to decrease and we lose that basically that natural contour that we had when we were in our 20s, okay? So I want to stop right here and let you guys basically take a break. Just take the rest of the week to go over all the layers of the skin, basically memorize what happens in those layers of skin. If your teacher will allow you, I want you guys to make a little 3D um, um, a 3D model of the 5 layers of skin and the dermis. So if it is allowed in your program, I would love to see pictures of what you guys created. And even if it's not a 3D printout, you can basically color a picture or whatever helps you remember the layers of the skin. I want to see pictures, so tag me in your pictures, and we will come back next week and we will finish the rest of the chapter. If we don't finish the rest of the chapter, we will at least do a part 2 and then finally a part 3 to finish up the rest of the chapter so I don't bore you guys to death. Alright, so if you guys have any questions or concerns about the first portion of this chapter, just comment below, and thanks for watching. Bye!